Okay, it's about that time of year again where we talk about Halloween. I try to do ones around holidays and show revealing things about them, and Halloween, of course, is no different. In fact, it's one of my favorite holidays, probably because I grew up with a sister who just passed away earlier this year, who had a birthday right before Halloween and always had her birthday on Halloween weekend, quite often coinciding with the whole festival type idea. My mom had a special crepe paper pumpkin that she set in the middle of the table that had a witch on the top of it that looked like Broomhilda and stuff. And so her birthday was a little more special. Mine occasionally, because Easter falls on different days, used to fall on Easter. But that's not what this is about. Ooh, there's a gelatinous cube with somebody decomposing inside of it. When we talk about Halloween, there's a lot of things that we could go off of, and I've tried to hit upon most all of them over the years of talking about this, such as our modern day, where they talk about how the candy industry kind of drove us to where we are now. But the reality of that seems to be that the very first origins of this had to do with a sacrifice that people did with one of their most valuable things for the better good, and it was for candy. Which at the very first origins that we have of it was honeycombs. And a honeycomb with this X or hex-shaped pattern that's built onto it leads to a whole lot, along with sacred geometry. You can also get fermented honey and really get off on it. But they also noticed that honey with that special casing that was like the elixir of the gods, if you will, in some ways. But in other chambers, they had babies. And that was the special food to feed them up, and the queen only got fed special foods and so on. And a lot of people have made connections and said that a lot of our iconography somehow mimics and may have even come from observations of bees. We've even had hive people and so on, and talked about a hive recently that created ice in the middle of the desert way before anything about refrigerators was known in a modern day. And where we're at here is in my video game that I quite often use for a learning tool along with playing the damn thing. And of course now becomes some time whenever this thing becomes even more relevant. For everybody's got all these monsters going around and you're killing them off, and it's all year round. That thought always brings me to the conclusion of, like Ozzy Osbourne and Alice Cooper and these guys, they said, everybody thinks we're freaking out, but we're really just trying to bring you Halloween all year round. Or what you think of as Halloween. Some of these exhibits here are all set up of it, and they've got pumpkins in front of doors, and it seems a little reverse maybe at first when you're playing it. But you go to the people's doors and you get candy out of pumpkins, and you can only hold 5 at a time, and you have to run around to these special people with pumpkins over their heads. And when you find one and give him one of the treats, then they morph into a creature for 5 seconds and go back. But the game really basically turned that off 4 years ago when they started doing it, and it gave too many problems with everybody popping all these things on people, and it lagged out and caused all kinds of things. So only a few of them still do it, but some of them do. But the idea is this: the Festival of Mask. In the game, whenever they do these festivals and stuff, they don't really name it the same thing. 4th of July is really the summer festival. They have the Festival of Lyra around it, and the You Sure Year's festival where you shoot off fireworks and stuff and it goes along with it, but no. Now they do one that really coincides with Chinese New Year, but somehow the rest of it is all taken from mythology and not really a straight standpoint. They don't really have one for Easter, but they always try to put something out around there. If you don't notice it, there's a lot of pumpkins around here, and they're all cut up into what we know as jack-o'-lanterns. And this jack's got a whole lot to do with a lot of things. Does anybody know what Jack is the nickname for? You know, like William Shatner, and they call him Bill Shatner. So Bill is of William. But what is Jack from? Do you know? You ever heard John F. Kennedy called Jack? There gets to be a little too much Johann, Oannes, John in things, so. But that's where Jack comes from, and it even comes through in flags and from pirates and things like that. It's not really what this is about, but jack-o'-lanterns. There's a tale of a man who did not die, that hell didn't want him, heaven didn't want him, and hell was afraid to take him because he was so mischievous, because he had outwitted the devil twice. And so he was to stay in limbo forever. Right here next to me is a mask of an owl, a wise old owl. It's got a lot more to do with that, or this Halloween type thing, than you'd really want to believe. But when we look around, we see orange and yellow and black as predominant colors, and purple. Purple, of course, is a color of royalty, and that shows something attached to this, but this other color set seems to go along with a sunset, a fading, and this has to do with sun worship. For it's kind of strange to look at it in a timeline when they actually knew when Easter was, and the point that the darkness of winter was taken over by the lightness of summer, and therefore pegging spring. At the end of the season, they had the same thing too. These are common dates of the 21st of the month, i.e. summer's right on the June 21st, and the longest day of the year and all of that, because it's the longest day of the year and the height of the summer. But if we looked at the other end of the calendar on that December 21st, it's the shortest day of the year. The sun does a pivot in both positions where you can hardly tell if you're staring into it, but it really doesn't seem to move at all. For it actually moves 1 degree per day down to its lowest point at December 21st, and then 3 days later, after this pivot effect, it starts to rise again. It also staggers at high noon, and that has to do with Horus and these other things that I'll go into in another video whenever I'm revealing something about that again. But this is the festival of Mask, and people wear a lot of masks. Sometimes you can say an actor's got a mask on when he doesn't, but if you look back at old time, in Greeks, all this type of stuff, you'll see people were wearing masks trying to portray things. Men would, of course, play women and so on. And when they tried to play women, they would put on some red ochre rouge, exaggerated, of course, redden their lips, and put some mascara around their eyes, like you see the Egyptians and stuff, to try to give a more feminine appearance, although men used to do this too, of course, like we see in Egypt. Funny, I just saw something, well, a couple of weeks back, where they showed a death mask of the ancient Egyptians, but it had holes cut in it and places for straps. And this was Upart again, where here's something kind of weird. It has to do with this death ritual, which apparently is after the flood of the Nile, which was kind of strange, and it goes along with this mask. So a similar time frame, but that time frame is when the Nile floods over. It doesn't do it in the spring, whereas it feeds off the other end, which they're having a winter when we have in the summer, and it flops back and forth. Most y'all all know this stuff. But Mask appears to be a god, which we are celebrating here rather than saying it's Halloween or Samhain or anything like that. And Mask goes back at least 6,000 years. But it doesn't look like, I always say, anything new to them at that time, and because of that, I've been able to attach it back to other connections. I think there was a person wearing a mask in ancient shamanistic rituals going back tens of thousands of years, and that this is something, the mask idea was just derived from this. We currently have masquerades. You wear a mask, it's a ball type of thing, and you beforehand probably need to know what the person you're going to see is going to look like. It's a way to hide things too. In another D&D game like this, I was able to, Dragon Age Inquisition, you go through a masquerade part in it, and it's something a little bit different. Probably would be cool to show you too. But it's an idea where you're dressed up as a certain thing, and they know what certain people are going to be dressed up as, but you don't know who's who, and things go down, and then you've got to figure it out. I've had about enough of people having to wear masks in a different way here recently. But that's something different. Or is it? Because this ritual goes along with death. And see, this idea of this mask that goes back over 6,000 years, they say, I think goes back at least, and pinpoints somehow in the younger Dryas event. And all the people that had died whenever that happened. Because the bonfire rituals that we talk about that are in Western Europe actually come from these people that used to live over in the other area, and it goes from a long time before. And it's one of burning the chaff of the fields, burning off certain fields and crops and everything to help make it go and do stuff. These sparks too that they're supposed to make this bonfire, that once it's really kicking, these people were going to take and lift up a huge log and flip it onto it. Kind of like the log flipping that you see if you ever watch Scottish type games. And whenever they did, sparks try to reach up to the heavens. You're trying to contact the other world because it's the time whenever the veil, like you've heard about, is the thinnest between. And what is that? Why? Well, that's the equinox thing. Okay, so it should be October 21st then, right? I mean, June, July, August, September 21st. So then why is it thrown off on a weird date like that? In a modern day, I've seen people talk about how crops, and it has to do with crops, and if you look at every iconography for this, it pretty much goes with crops or death in some way. But that crops go along with this well, and in fact the freezing of the year. And so the people that came up with this were living in an environment that about this point in the year, which we experience now too, and if you look at global heating and warming, this is a long time ago, like 9,600 years ago, which we looked at on the pulsing thing that comes up, and not actually the younger Dryas, but that long ago is the highest temperature. So this probably could go back to that type of date. That's a stretch, But it's at the point where you start having not just cooler nights, because that's been going on for a while, depending on how in northern hemisphere that you live. But also it's right before the very first frost, if you're in the farm belt. So it's another thing that shows that, well, did they have farming back then, or did they just know the crops were going to wilt at this certain point and went through all these things? Well, did that lead to the ideas that came through with farming? Does that go older than this time too? Probably does. Of course, they don't want to give credit for it unless you find something outright. It's like Göbekli Tepe. It's hard to find that fertile plain that they were growing a lot of plants in there, because that's the Harappan plain in Haran there, and that's all taken up and been grown over and over and over again. And you want to look at the things that they've been able to slightly detect now over in Western Europe of things that happened a few thousand years before. If you look at something dated twice that much or more, it's going to be run over to the point it's lost. And if somebody did find it, they stole all the stones and took them away long ago. So scarecrows have to do with this season of the year. Holly, believe it or not, the picking of apples. A lot of iconographies we have in the Bible, all these things are talking about seasons and change, but a lot of it's astrotheology. Corn stalks, corn mazes. Before there was corn, there were wheat mazes and so on. Hemp mazes, if you will. All kinds of plants doing these things. There's a world tree right there, and you can see how it's glowing now, like after somebody feeds it. There's a mask up on that wall there, and in fact all around this whole Protector's Enclave, which usually shows you in a daylight afternoon time, constantly. During special events it shows it at nighttime. It's all decked up. There are jack-o'-lanterns by the thousand in this place. But something else that you can find if you just looked up at the sky because it's nighttime, well, you see my new hawk creation here that I have. It's a familiar, and I can get him to attack and stuff. It's not even my companion. Something extra you keep down on your bar like you would a potion and stuff. It's pretty neat. He's flying over the moon. But if you look, the moon has a tail to it. Almost makes the moon look like it's comet. Yep, he does a loop-de-loop every now and then. Almost looks like that's a comet there, but it's not. What it is it's a depiction of something having shattered into that moon. And there's a whole bunch of icy remnants all there, and it doesn't look like that was blown off the moon. If it is, it was on the dark side of the moon or something, and comet hit the moon or something off there. Well, I've talked about the timelines that it gives for this game, and it's a big expanse, but other portions of it, and Conan the Barbarian, all these things come back to a point. Sumerian tales come back to a point. A lot of these things come back to a point. Even that idea of Atlantis comes back to a point. And when we get to that point, like I'm trying to get to, slowly, you have the Younger Dryas event where comet had struck the Earth, caused a big problem. Maybe this is an idea that a piece of that went right over our shoulder, and if you look, there's no big giant craters. Not all of them are in place just yet. What's going on? Well, that's because, bam, it's been hit after that fact. Often hear people talk about how Jupiter saves us all and everything from things coming in, but hell, if it's not on the side right where it happens at and so on, it doesn't work. And in fact, people have figured out now, yeah, half the time it pulls things in and slings them and doesn't grab a hold of them. And it may do a Comet Shoemaker-Levy situation like we saw years ago, but it didn't grab it, and so it slings all of these objects in, pre-broken up, and then it gets 2 shots at Earth. You see, there's a strange tale of witches, which I will go into in my other video about witches, where they always have a broom tail and stuff onto them. In fact, in this event, I can get a broom for this new bard that I have going on. Yeah, and it's just like Harry Potter and stuff and flying brooms. One of the ideas that goes along with that, though, strangely, is this meteor shower, known right around this exact time. That seems to be what it coincides with. Strangely, it's around the world. Definitely 4 or 5 cultures that are not supposed to have any connections, unless it's some ancient one that no one knows about, had an idea that around that weekend area, if you will, and towards the 31st, towards the 1st of November, that pivot, regardless of if their calendar was off or not, it was still that dating, by the way, going along, which a lot of people have realized with this shower of meteors that happens early in the year too, as the Leonid meteor shower and the Taurid, but it happens then towards the sun and during the day, and you really wouldn't notice it unless something hits ground, or you had an air bolide event or something like that. Whereas this one is seen as the witches zipping around, going back and forth, taking messages to heaven. Makes you wonder how they turned it into something bad with that idea going on. Because what we've learned about ancient witches really got turned around on its thumb there, didn't it? And of course that was because of what was said in the Bible and all these people going off on things, but we're not going there necessarily. Where I'd like to go is to another article that I've got queued up that shows you some of this connection here, but we're at 25 minutes. I'll never do it in one video. I might as well add on to this one and continue, and then try to put the other one out later. Hell, I've even got one talking about Frankenstein's castle to put out this year, so there's going to be about a 5 for in a Halloween special set. So these witches with their cauldrons cooking up all kinds of great foods that everybody loves slowly turns into an old hag that's making evil potions instead of ones that save and cure you and everything. And it turns into just a hellish thing where they start hanging and burning women alive. A lot of times to steal their lands and so on. I've talked about this. If you ever watched anything that's thorough about the Salem witch trials, you'll get into that. And the fact that rye mold that they had, that wheat like this over here, and that stalk over there, if it doesn't do it right, it can ferment, and it'll form this ergot, which really makes you start tripping like you're on acid. And the next thing you know, hey diddle diddle, the cat in the moon, and the cat had a fiddle, and they were dancing in the devil with the devil in the pale moonlight, and the cow jumped over the moon, and they believed that shit. I can see it. Let me eat another bread made out of that stuff. In fact, it's known that some people probably tried to make that happen, but on unsuspecting people that didn't know, you would freak out. A la the Salem witch trials, and others it seems it may go along with. So, the phenomenon seems to have a conspicuous cohort. All of these crops, though, are things that are at the end of the year cycle, not looking like a spring thing at all. Long year, drawn out gourds, second year's harvest of anything else, second harvest of the year. People are all wearing masks. Here's one of those creatures that turns right there, but I don't have one to give him right now. He'd have a thing over his head if he did. Here's another one that turns. Soldier just standing there. Let me get back to the issue at hand. This year you can go between a witch, a scarecrow, and a little goblin guy. A lot of people are probably going to go with a witch. Last year was a werewolf, and we all went with it, and I got a werewolf's outfit. I showed in the video a year ago. Close to a year ago. Ish. They make sure it encompasses the holiday, but they don't necessarily gear it right on. It's got to be, so that's the way it works. Love this world tree here, the idea that's here. So Halloween, as we know it, is All Hallows Eve. And people all around the world had this same thing about a death ritual that had to do with their family, their ancient family. People that had passed long ago and recent. Sometimes they would have shamans and other people that were trying to be a contact or a portal between you and your family. And to be honest, I think that this really involved some type of psychologist, whether he had a mask on or not, trying to get you over it and understand things from their point of view. And did they really have a conduit, as a lot of people try to pull off? Yes and no. From an outward third-person point of view, somebody that's real intelligent like that could probably look at it and go, well, if you believe all that shit's true, then therefore this would probably be their response to what you've got going on. Later we have Ouija boards and things like that, and there's a lot of divination that was associated with this in ancient times. And when we say divination, this is looking upon the gods, divine, all that goes with it. It's words that are connected to it, but it's also figuring out the exact seasons. And in fact, they were sure of it. Whenever they were sure of it, they were doing this festival, and this festival wasn't a one-night thing. In between 5 and 9 o'clock, you grabbed candy. But in the original tale, let me tell you a third-party tale here, and an old folklore idea that goes along with this. You see, Stonehenge itself was once told, like they had tell stories about fairy mounds and all this things, leprechauns and stuff that go along with it. One of the tales of Stonehenge was that in ancient times, the Druids, what led way to the idea of monotheistic thought was that all the demons on the world had become trapped. And it had happened during a magic sacred rite that happened at Stonehenge. This is, of course, the rites of fall, and then the rites of spring, the rites of Yule, or what we know of as Christmas, and so on, rolling through the death of winter. It's astrotheological, it seems like. But it also connects with life and the cycle of life and everything, so it's well understood why they put it together. But in Stonehenge, there's 2 rings around on it and everything. Well, what they had done is they had conjured up or somehow gotten in lieu with all these demons. Here's a secondary thought on the idea that was presented hundreds of years ago. That they got them all there saying that they were going to worship them and that they were going to do this ritual and they'd have this thing and every year and all this bullshit if you'll just come to our thing, because you have to show up, our SVP, right? So they show up, and somehow the demons talk to each other, and they literally got all of them, and they had them somehow cramp in the middle of that circle, and they pulled off some ritual where they were standing all outside the ritual and doing this thing where they were dressed up like the demons that they were talking about, and in the process they took honeycomb and the better foods and pieces of that and sacrificed to these guys and gave it to them. And when they accepted it, oh shit, because this was like Superman. You know, whenever he tries to play like I lost all my powers and he goes into the thing, but he's got it reversed and it happens to everybody else and they're trapped forever. Now we don't have to mess with it. It's all gone. Druids fixed it. Gone. Only catch is, once per year, because we made this deal, we have to dress up like demons and stuff, and then we have to give up candy to these demons and stuff. So in essence, that's where the candy giving to kids that are wearing mess up or whatever. But back in the ancient first point of this, you were giving up some of your stuff to a guy that was pulling off a god effigy wearing a mask. It was for the greater of good of all, and feeding all the priests and everything that weren't hunters and stuff. Perhaps like at Göbekli Tepe. And in effect, you were keeping the demons away. Yeah. But those are really the demons of winter. The fears of winter. Everything that goes along with this. And so you can also tell from all of this, this comes from a people in a time where at least there was a season of winter and not necessarily so tropical. For they wouldn't experience these things in the same way. Like Egypt can be shown to not even have the seasons correct up right with their floods because of where the Nile comes from. But not much seasons goes on in Egypt, even though there has been snow there. Might surprise the hell out of some people. So these witches' brooms, this meteor shower, is apparently indicative of their remembrance of all these people dying a long time ago in a mental land far, far away. Once upon a time. And the remnant they see every year, which apparently may be us still running through a dust particle twice a year of this remnant of something shattered, which kind of looks like after that happens, as we go round and round, we're going to run through that. That's going to cause a lot of problems because you can kind of see the chunks there, and I know they're bigger than football stadiums, and oh my gosh. So something like that could have happened and made their moon's crater, whether it caught one or not, and then 3 or 4 big ones came in. Seemed to be commentary stuff because it appears to be air bolides. It seems to be the thing to go off of now, but we're realizing that that happened a hell of a lot more than we want to give credit for. And just because we don't find a crater doesn't mean that something didn't, like a nuclear blast, or 100 or 1,000 times more, like we showed recently in a site in the Middle East, which might have to do with Sodom and Gomorrah's tale. Literally take some people and turn them up a few thousand degrees for a while, and just obliterate things. That's how mythologies form. And through deep investigation, not on my own, but seeing what other people have told and shown, and finding this ancient mythology idea that they have that goes back in the very first of writings, concepts, and then before finding some ritualistic ideas and items which says they had this thing going on at least 6,000 years ago. Seems to go all the way to the younger dryas at least, and we have this because the Day of the Dead was something that as soon as we got over here and found it, we're like, yeah, so we've got this and All Saints Day, and they had the same thing already. Whether you want to say it comes before they ever came or not, and who told them what and why it went with it or not. Does it come from a separate entity whenever they saw this thing happen and knew it had happened? Did other people enrich them with the idea after it, and somehow a knowledge was given, a remembrance in some way? It's faded now and turned into a lot of different BS. And nowadays looks like little kids dressing up, cute and going door to door, getting some candy. And in a lot of ways, people don't even understand where that originally came from. And if it really has to do with that mythology thing, it's real important that we keep Halloween going, isn't it? Thought about that, but you think about how many they might have had at Stonehenge, and we're talking about hundreds, and there are thousands and thousands and millions of kids which do this. But do demons breed too? And all these things you could try to web into it somehow. But a reality is that people with pointy hats were pretty damn smart. They brought agriculture to the world. Some of their shamans and wizards that knew all of these things going on, and I've shown you these conical hats like this and straw hats that look like this, but yet there was a gold cowling that went over that's a big old tall cap, some of which show a metonic cycle that they knew about from way back when, and where that actually comes from, and the hatred of that knowledge and people trying to cover up all of that literally through the ages has given us the ideas of which is bad, whenever for a large portion of time which is sacred, which is fantastic. They even consult witches in your Bible, but then later tell you do not suffer a witch. Is that because the oracle part of it was BS? Some of the healings were BS. Some of the other ones they knew about, and it didn't require all the things that they said that they wanted at that time. Strange ideas come to mind about it, but yeah, as we're looking at a full moon on Halloween concept idea right here, that shattering of a comet there against the moon also left a big mark upon the earth that we're now just realizing, by the way, that even happened to us. In fact, the dogma of all the BS I've been talking about is what has really kept us away from it, and everybody that ever brought it up until a modern time when it can be simultaneously proven by the people that were skeptics has been written off like so many other things that we talk about on this channel. It's kind of the purpose of it in the first place is, well, they act a little ambiguous about blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. Let me know what you think down in the comments there about Halloween. Hey, can you remember your first Halloween outfit? Better yet, you might remember seeing a picture of whenever your parents dressed you up whenever you were 2 or 3 in some kind of giraffe outfit. Do you remember wanting and getting and putting on a cool Halloween outfit and what it was? And why? Let me know downstairs. Just to let you know, there was a few years in a row I was Casper the Friendly Ghost. Yeah. Peace.